Okay, very good. Now, I always have trouble with this sharing. Okay, now it goes. Can you see the screen now? Yes? No?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's okay, fine. Is it clear? Yes? Very good.
Yes. Yeah, it's good.
Okay. So, the topic, Alana, I think there's a dog barking and your microphone is open, on. So we're listening to the dog barking. Okay, thanks, Alan. Okay, very well. The topic of our discussion this week is the difference between two definitions in teaching. One is called assessment, and the other is called evaluation. Probably this concept of evaluation is familiar to you, correct? But this idea of assessment may be not so clear at this moment. Very well. Can you look at this diagram you see on the screen? That is a diagram, right? Can you tell me what you can see? How many circles can you see in the diagram?
Professor, could
Yes.
you lower a little bit, maybe reduce the zoom?
Yeah, so I'll have to
Please.
interrupt just a second. Let me see what I can do. I'll have to stop then because okay, so what I'll do is this. I'll try to put this on for you with the full screen, okay? But I'll stop sharing first. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, but I don't know what's happening. It's not showing. This is strange.
Maybe because the zoom is 100%. Maybe if the zoom is around 75 or 80%, we can see better, because now part of the document is off the limits of
Okay,
the
I'll try. Wait a minute. Just wait a second. I'll try to figure this out. Okay, let's see now. Yeah, but it doesn't show up for me to share. That's the point. See if you can see now. Is it better?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
So tell me what you can see in this diagram. How many circles do you see?
3 circles.
3 circles. Okay. The bigger circle is what?
Teaching.
Teaching. How? Don't forget you need to activate the microphone when you speak, okay? Yeah, we're not listening.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Now we are. Okay. So the bigger circle is teaching. Inside this bigger circle, we have a median circle. What does it say there?
Assessment.
Assessment. Okay, fine. And inside assessment, we have a small circle,
Tests.
tests. In other words, what is another word you can use for test?
Exams.
No, okay. Now, I'm not asking for a synonym. I just mentioned before, a little bit before.
Evaluations.
Evaluation. Correct. Fine. So, what is our conclusion? Alana, you want to say something, Alana? Okay. What is our conclusion then, based on this diagram? What is the conclusion we take?
That tests are only a small part of the assessment.
Correct. And both of them are inside the universe of teaching. So, what is the difference then? If you have read the material in the platform, how can we specify, how can we define the difference between assessment and evaluation? Since you can see in the diagram that tests or evaluation would be a one instrument of assessment, how can we make this difference?
I believe assessments can be done in different ways, not only using tests.
Okay.
Tests are a useful tool to understand the development of the student, but it's not the only tool that the teacher can use. So there are many other ways of assessing a problem or something that the student is having problems with.
Right. Any other opinions? No? So you agree with Haisa then? Okay, the question here is not exactly what the circle shows, okay, but the consequence of what it shows. Assessment is a bigger process than testing. They all have the same principles, okay? So when you design an instrument of assessment or an instrument of testing, you think, okay, you reflect on the same principles. What principles are those? What, why, when, and how. Okay, so these 4 points, okay, which compose the biggest basis of teaching and learning, right? They are the same for assessment and evaluation and testing. So what, why, when, and how. In other words, you need to have an objective. You need to have a purpose, right? For assessment or evaluating. You know, as teachers, that when we evaluate, we have three kinds of evaluation: the diagnostic, the formative, and the summative evaluation. In other words, diagnostic evaluation is when you collect information to place your process. So you need to know where students stand. You need to know what their background is. You need to know what information is important for you to prepare planning. Formative evaluation is that evaluation you do during the process, okay, on a daily basis or weekly basis. It depends on your activity. But this is the formative, right? This is like making a portfolio of the student, of the progress. Okay? Very well. Summative evaluation is when you need to make that terrible decision of telling your student you pass or you fail, right? This is the final step in evaluation. And you know that the Brazilian system requires that, right? So you need to tell your student you can go to second level, third level, or you need to stay in the first level. So this is what we call summative evaluation. Very well. I believe that you are familiar with these terms. The question back in the circles now is, which evaluation, right? What kind of those three evaluations is part of the assessment and which is part of evaluation? Sorry for my throat. It's a little dry. I forgot the water. So tell me, think about these. Yes.
I believe formative is part of assessment. I believe that diagnostic is also part of assessment, but summative is part of tests.
Okay. Thanks, Alana. Any other opinion?
Can I speak in Portuguese?
Ok.
Bom, tem uns 2 anos que eu tô travada falando, mas já retornei. Falar no inglês, no caso. Sobre esse processo aí de avaliação, esses 3 tipos, né, de evaluation, diagnostic, summative e formative, é complicado como é que funciona esse processo todo de avaliação, porque para quem já está na sala de aula, trabalhando no ensino básico, a gente percebe o quanto essa avaliação somativa ela é muito forte ainda. Essa avaliação diagnóstica e formativa, apesar de já está sendo discutida bastante no que diz respeito ao processo de avaliação, mas esse tradicionalismo da avaliação somativa, ela ainda é muito imbricada dentro da sala de aula. E interessante como os próprios alunos também são acostumados nesse processo de avaliação e têm apenas essa avaliação somativa como única forma de você avaliar. Sim. Então, sempre a questão, o instrumento da prova e dos testes ainda é algo assim muito latente em salas de aula, e até mesmo nos próprios processos de planejamento dentro de algumas escolas a gente percebe isso, que ainda é muito forte. É como se não existisse mais outras formas de avaliar e como se essas outras formas da avaliação diagnóstica e formativa não fosse importante e não fosse parte de um processo diferente. E é um tipo de assunto, a avaliação a ser questionada dentro das escolas, e eu volto a falar principalmente das escolas públicas, é uma discussão assim muito ampla, porque é complicado a gente lidar até mesmo com a opinião de alguns colegas nossos de trabalho em relação a esse processo de avaliar.
Okay, Alana. Right. So let's try to come to a conclusion, right? Because that's the biggest point.
Yeah.
You know that this idea of assessment and evaluation is to a great extent is cultural, right? People in Brazil, and not only students but also parents and family, they want to see a number written on a paper saying that the student has reached the necessary requirements to progress. And we teachers know that in the process, this is not the most important part. Okay, so let's try to make a basic difference between assessment and evaluation so that we can go ahead. Assessment is a process of collecting information, but not necessarily to make a decision about that information. Assessment is a process of analyzing, reflecting on different aspects of the process of teaching and learning. One of those elements is evaluation. So assessment, okay, is the action of thinking, is the action of reflecting on the process. And the process involves both the teacher and the student. So when you practice self-observation, when you practice self-evaluation, right? You are trying to improve your teaching. The same happens when you collect information about the student. For example, if you have a student in your class who is very shy, you can't use the tools to revert that shyness if you don't first talk to the student, if you don't first find out what is the problem with the student. It may be a problem inside the class. It may be a problem with the family. It may be a problem with a past trauma that he had. So when you send the student, when you guide the student into talking to the pedagogical support will try to collect a lot of information before making a decision. And this decision can be, you need to go to the psychologist. We need to call the parents. We need to continue checking on the student only. We don't need the psychologist and we don't need the family. This is a self problem. So this is assessment. the decision is the evaluation. Right? So we can say that assessment, and this is what the circle shows, assessment comes before testing. Remember, what, when, why, and how. So if you don't have information about your students, if you don't collect this information about your students, you will not be able to have good evaluation. So for some writers, for some authors, assessment and evaluation are the same. They are synonyms. They have no difference. But this is not completely correct. Assessment doesn't involve decision. It involves thinking, reflecting, based on the information you have collected. When you come to a decision about a situation, you have covered the phase of assessment already, or you should have done so. Let's try to think of a situation here. I have been teaching English for, I don't know, 100 years. There is this other teacher who is a novice in teaching. He has just begun. Because I have been teaching for such a long time, my experience supports decisions based on observation only. But for the novice teacher, this assessment of using observation only can be very difficult, can be very fail. The best for this novice teacher is to use the observation tools like questionnaires, okay, files, right? Even if it's only a question and answer exercise at the end of a class, the point here is you should go through different steps of assessment before you make a decision, before you make an evaluation. And that involves giving a definition, giving a solution for the problem you're facing. Now, why the circles? Because this process is a cycle. Now I can see you, Alana. Nice to meet you. It's okay, Alana. You don't need to say anything. It's fine. Okay, so why the circles? Because this process is a cycle. So let's think together. You have a problem. You assess the problem, okay? Collect the information about the problem. Then you make a decision about the problem. Your decision may be effective and efficient, or it may prove to be ineffective. If it is ineffective, and that means if you don't solve the problem, what happens? You go back to the assessment phase again, because you maybe need to collect more information. One of the materials you have in the platform shows the decision-making cycle, right? And this is exactly what you can see in these circles. So what happens? Why do people confuse assessment and evaluation so frequently? We usually say that diagnostic, formative, and summative evaluation is also the same as diagnostic, formative, and summative assessment. What's the difference? Diagnostic and summative are more closely associated with decisions than formative. All of them imply some changes sometimes. So you change your way of teaching, you change the material you're using, right? So all those three phases of evaluation, like diagnostic, formative, and summative, they involve some changes, right? Sometimes. If you are taking, so the basic difference here is, if you make a decision, this is evaluation. If you only think and reflect, this is assessment. This is the basic difference in class. For example, you can collect information about a student because you have a feeling that this student will cause problems in the future. This is assessment. You are not making any decision about that process. After some time, you can go back to the information you collect because he is causing a problem now, and you need to make a decision about his situation. So usually, we consider assessment this investigation, and evaluation the decision you make based on that investigation. So a test, what does it make? What does it do? What does it do? It gives the student some questions, okay, in one way or another, to prove, for the student to prove that he was able to learn the most important topics that you taught. What is that? That is assessment. You're collecting information about that student considering the most important points you have taught. Now, based on the correct and the incorrect number of answers the student provides, you make a decision and you give him a number to represent the situation. That is terrible, in my opinion. But that is the evaluation. So you analyze the information the student provided in the test, and you make a decision about that test. What is the problem in Brazil, Alana, that you were mentioning before? Most schools and most teachers use only testing as a tool for decisions. And that is not good, okay? We have projects, we have group research, we have seminars, we have debate, we have so many other instruments that we can use with our students, to have a global picture of what they have learned or not learned before we can come to a decision about the situation. Okay, so when you read, when you read materials about assessment and evaluation, you will notice that some authors, some writers, they talk about assessment and evaluation as the same thing. Okay, because this has been a polemics, a controversial thing since the beginning of history. But I can tell you that that view is not the best one, and it's not the most accepted one. The ideal situation, you could do different things in class. You should control, you should collect the information about different things that you do, including testing, because you know that for Brazilian students, this is important. Then, when you have all the information collected, you make a decision and say, okay, this student corresponds to 8. Sorry. That student corresponds to 10. He's an excellent student. But unfortunately, because of the conditions, because of the structures of schools, because of so many different things, it's easier for teachers to prepare tests. And most teachers are not prepared, are not trained to design tests. And you know that because we have now discussed a lot of abilities and competences, okay, the PCNs. We have discussed a lot about how to do this in this format of online and education at a distance. So, to prepare a test with 10 questions, each one equivalent to 1 point, is easier. And you know that if you have 10 classes, each class containing 40 students, it's really difficult to collect information about the 400 students, you know, like this, like a global view. So it's easier to have a test, especially if it's a multiple choice test, right? Because you can correct so fast. But then there is no feedback for the student. There is no consequence other than pass or fail. And this is the worst scenario for teaching. But unfortunately, I repeat, this is what we do in Brazil today. Of course, that with this idea of competences and skills and abilities and all the progress of pedagogics, this discussion has improved. Correct? So this is the idea of evaluation. In my point, okay, I would tell you that assessment is an everyday process. So you should do this all the time, every class. Whether using observation or questionnaires or questions and answers or exercises, whatever. but every day, every class. You know, it's funny when a teacher says, this is my best student. And then you ask the teacher, why? Why is he your best student? And then he says, because he always takes 10. And then if we turn to the teacher and say, so I'm sorry, but I cannot believe that he's your best student, just because of that. And the teacher gets angry. So, oh, you're saying that I cannot evaluate my student, I don't know my class, da, 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 da. Okay? So this is the basic difference between evaluation and assessment. Would you like to ask any questions at this moment? Otherwise, I would like to show you something that you have in the material, but I want you to give me your opinion on how to solve that problem.
Teacher, I just would like to bring you a comment about this. So, through the observation, sometimes I feel that the assessment is being done in class by the teacher, but I don't know if it comes to a solution because uh, I'm not saying that this is easy to identify, what is not working that in the class, but the teachers know, right? They are able to identify it, but I don't know if the next step is being taken. You know what I mean? Like the evaluation to bring a solution for that. Sometimes we know the students, they have a problem in something, but I don't know if the next step is being done. It's the idea to fix the problem.
Right. And why do you think that this is happening? We have two problems. We have two problems there. Tell me your opinion.
Yeah, sometimes I guess the school thing. Sometimes, I mean, conditions for teachers to do this, like I think Raissa has mentioned that. That comes to numbers of students in a classroom, like the quantity of groups the teacher have. That makes, I guess, a little bit hard for teachers to come up with a solution for every single student, even though they identify the problem, even though they do the assessment. But when it comes to solution, I think that would demand more time for each teacher to work properly, on solutions for each student.
Right. Is there any other opinion?
I agree with Alana and I agree with Hall. And I think sometimes the school doesn't want something more like an assessment. I think it depends a lot. It depends a lot on where you work and the methodology that your school applies to the students. But I know that sometimes the school just wants something to show the parents because we know that now more than students, they are also clients. So they want to see the progression of the students, and they want the numbers because for them this is how they understand that they are that the school is doing a good job, the teacher is doing a good job. So sometimes it's a problem that is inside the school, not only with the teacher.
Right. We have two problems there. The first problem is observation. Observation is a mental, subjective problem. If you don't write down the information you collect with your observation, if you don't have a second opinion on the observation you have done, most people don't accept it. So when you come to assessment, considering only observation, very probably that will not be taken into account, that will be disregarded. Oh, you are one person. How can we be sure that all the other people think the same way? So observation is not a very good instrument of assessment, unless, as I told you before, the teacher has been working in the teaching process a very long time. And even in that situation, observation may be questioned. So my advice to you, you can do your observation, but collect solid information to prove that what you are saying you observed is the truth. And usually it takes a long time or some time. So my advice to you, don't make decisions about a student or a situation in just 1 or 2 classes of observation and collection of information. Try to discuss this. You know, like doctors, when they come to a meeting and they discuss a case, see, the doctor comes and says, listen, I have come up with this patient, okay, and he shows this, and this, and I can't close a diagnosis. I cannot finish my diagnosis. Help me. And the other doctors will analyze the information the doctor brought and try to come to a consensus on the diagnostic situation. The same should be with the teacher, not a group of teachers, but try to share the information you have. And do not use only observation for assessment. In your material, in the platform, you have other examples that you can, think about the best one for your class, or some of the best ones for your class. Okay, you have other ideas there. And next week, like in a fortnight, because next Saturday we will not have a class, but on the other class, we will be talking a little bit about assessing the skills, right? This is more difficult. But anyway, do not use observation only. Try to collect solid information. The second problem we have is this decision, right? Usually, for example, let me give you a situation, it's better. You make a test, you take a test, you received the tests, you correct the tests. Do you analyze the results of the test? Like you have 40 students, 10 got 9, 20 got 7. When you analyze the situation, do you look at the questions you made? So out of 40 students, how many got right X% of the questions? So you need to make a quantitative analysis of your test. You need to know if the test you made was too much above the level of your teaching, if it was in the level of your teaching and that was a problem with the students. So after a test, you have thousands of information that you can collect. And tell me, how many teachers make assessment of their own testing? I don't know anyone. I don't know if you know someone, but I don't know anyone. I haven't met a single teacher who could show me the statistics of a testing. Because see, if you don't have arguments, how can you put your finger on it? How can you say, I was responsible? My test was too difficult. Next time, I'll make it easier. Or how can you say the students didn't study? It's more simple for the teacher. You make a test, 90% of the students, disaster. Then you say, oh, they don't study. That's a very bad group. That is not a decision. That will not help either the students or you, and even then the process. But it's easier, correct? You don't observe your instrument. You don't assess your instrument. So it's much easier to say, they don't study. It's a very bad group. That's why they have bad grades. And bye-bye. That information is lost. The schools don't do it. The teachers don't do it. The pedagogics don't do it. And you know what the pedagogic people say? They can only act when they are conscious of a problem, of a situation. I don't agree with that. But that's what happens. So my suggestion, do not assess only the students. Assess yourself. Reflect on what you're doing. Because the consequence may be to help the student. Because you may be the problem, not the student. And when you need to act, make sure you have solid information to base your evaluation, to base your decision. It's easy? Never. It's hard and difficult and complex. The only thing I can tell you, it's the most wonderful, magical, fantastic thing that a teacher can do. So if you find a way to really do it, you will see how easy things will become. You know, let's try to make one more example before we move ahead. You feel attracted, okay, by a woman, or a woman by a man. Sometimes, if you come directly up to the person and try to convince the person to be with you, it works. Sometimes it doesn't. So, but you are in love with that person. You are crazy for that person. So what do? You start collecting information about the person. You try to see if the person has an Instagram. You check if the person has a Facebook. You check if the person is a friend of another friend. And you start asking, what do you know that person? What does she like? Does she like music? What kind of music? You try to find the address of the person and you send flowers, you send chocolate, you invite for a dinner. That is assessment. You are not doing anything different than approaching the person, cornering the person. Of course, you are not going to be doing that for 10 years. You'll be doing that for 3 weeks. If that is a positive response, then you go ahead. If that is a negative response, you say, oh, okay, bye-bye. The line has to move ahead. Isn't that correct? That is assessment and evaluation. And you do this with everything in your life. When you come to a shop, to a store, to buy a bikini, or you women to buy a dress, shoes, do you do this without trying on? Or you go to the fitting room, you try it on, and you look in the mirror and say, oh, it's nice, I'm beautiful. If someone is next to you or together with you, you ask for an opinion. Isn't that true? What's that? Assessment. After the information you collect, you say, okay, I'll get it. Or you say, okay, no, not this one. Let me try another one. Assessment and evaluation. With a car, with a house, okay, with boyfriends and girlfriends, and all the things you do in your life is assessment and evaluation. If we want to be more extreme, if you are married, can you decide to divorce or to be divorced in 2 weeks? No. You need to think. You need to reflect. Oh, something is happening. Then you collect information. You know, like St. Peter? St. Peter is the guardian of the sky door, of heaven's door. He has an agenda. People say that everything you do here, he writes down on the agenda. When you come to heaven's door, you knock, and St. Peter looks at you and says, hell. And then you go to hell. St. Peter is showing the agenda. He opens the door and says, come in, welcome to heaven. Based on his assessment of your actions on earth. This difference is simple. Yes, Alana.
Professor, eu acho interessante esses posicionamentos a respeito de avaliação. Eu sempre falo muito assim da minha experiência na escola pública, por ser professora concursada. E já está, né, há muitos anos, lecionando. E é muito complicado, porque, assim, eu sou uma das professoras que sempre luta pela questão da incorporação da reunião de classe, né, entre o conselho de classe, entre os professores, a equipe pedagógica, para que a gente possa ter conhecimento juntos, né, para ver se o professor e a parte pedagógica da escola caminham juntos para entender aquele aluno ou aqueles alunos que apresentam determinadas dificuldades, e são dificuldades que podem ser trabalhadas. São dificuldades ao longo do ano letivo, a gente consegue solucionar uma boa parte das questões, solucionar ou pelo menos amenizar, né, a questão. E a gente está muito nessa questão, nesse processo de avaliação, porque na escola a gente trabalha coletivamente. Eu sempre digo que quando uma parte falha todo mundo. Né? Falha o professor, falha a equipe pedagógica, falha o todo. Então, quando não há essa aproximação, entenda como é que caminho tenha que ser tomado para que eu possa melhorar o desempenho daquele meu aluno, e isso é uma briga ferrenha em escolas, na verdade, porque quando a gente pega uma equipe pedagógica que deveria propor esses casos, e a gente acaba esbarrando com umas mentes conservadoras, não estão dentro da sala de aula, né? Quem está na sala de aula é o professor, que busca não fazer essa aproximação de entender qual a dificuldade daquele aluno, de que maneira avaliar, de olhar para esse processo avaliativo junto com a equipe de professores. Isso dificulta cada vez mais o nosso próprio trabalho dentro da sala de aula. Porque muitas vezes, na maioria delas, a gente acaba fazendo aquilo que a própria gestão e a própria equipe pedagógica quer que faça em termos de avaliação.
Sim.
Então, de certa forma, apesar da gente querer fazer um processo diferente, refletir sobre o processo, nós temos que acabar fazendo aquilo que o pedagógico quer que a gente faça.
Certo.
Dentro da sala de aula. Né? Eu já trabalhei em Belém, e eu acho que eu trabalhei em uma escola pública aí, e visava essa questão do conselho de classe, e aquilo melhorava enormemente a vida dos alunos que apresentavam maior dificuldade, porque a fala dos professores, basicamente, era unânime em determinadas circunstâncias.
Certo.
E a aproximação dessa equipe pedagógica para tentar fazer com que a gente buscasse amenizar as questões, aquilo era extremamente importante. Eu acho que foi uma das poucas escolas que eu trabalhei onde se discutia durante o ano todo essa questão da avaliação, em termos dos alunos. Uma avaliação no todo, na verdade. Não é avaliar somente o nosso aluno, mas a gente avaliar também a nossa própria prática dentro da sala de aula.
Sim.
Porque nem sempre tudo vai ser acerto. Mas termos a capacidade de refletir a forma como a gente está ensinando, a maneira como esse meu aluno está aprendendo, avaliar o processo como um todo, isso é muito importante. E essa própria discussão, ela é muito complicada dentro do âmbito escolar, porque a gente acaba esbarrando nessas dificuldades para quem é para estar de mãos dadas conosco, enquanto docente.
Sim, com certeza. Gente, isso aí não é uma coisa... assim, eu estou um pouco preocupado porque o tempo da reunião está para se esgotar. Eu não sei se o Meet vai nos cortar ou não, tá? Mas, antes que isso aconteça, ou se acontecer, vocês têm uma historinha lá no material que vocês... Um dos materiais, tá? Que começa com o decision making, tá? Vocês têm uma historinha lá de um farmer que tinha um cachorro, um basket de grãos e um goose, um ganso. E aí ele queria levar os três para outra margem do rio, né? Para poder vender no mercado. Só que ele não podia botar os três juntos no barco, porque o cachorro ia comer o ganso ia comer o grão. E aí ele ia ficar sem nada, só com o cachorro. E aí ele ia ter que matar o cachorro. Então ele estava sentado na margem do rio, né? Assessing, pensando, né? Refletindo como ele podia resolver o problema. Então eu gostaria que vocês pensassem um pouco nisso, tá? E quem puder de vocês três que estão aqui me dar um retorno lá no grupo, seria interessante, tá? Para a gente não perder a discussão. Se o Meet não nos cortar, aí nós vamos discutir ainda aqui mesmo isso rapidamente, tá? Mas como está chegando no finalzinho do tempo da aula, da reunião que foi programado, eu não sei se o Meet vai nos cortar ou não vai, tá? Mas então, isso que a Alana está colocando aí é extremamente importante, tá? Nós deveríamos ter conselho de classe quinzenalmente, mensalmente. Nós deveríamos reunir professores o tempo inteiro. Não apenas para comer bolo, para tomar café, né? Para fazer aquelas brincadeirinhas de pedagogo. Eu não tenho nada contra os pedagogos, apenas eu acho que deveria haver um pouco mais de objetividade, entendeu? Então, não é só para tomar café, para brincar, não. Pode-se fazer tudo isso. Porém, o importante é trazer o assessment de cada professor e, em conjunto, buscar uma avaliação que implica uma decisão. E é claro que a decisão não vai ser para pior, tem que ser sempre para melhor. E aí é o que eu disse para vocês. Isso é um ciclo. Tá? Você decide alguma coisa, você diz assim, eu vou fazer isso, tá? Aí, você faz. Pode ser que funcione, pode ser que não funcione. Aí, você volta de novo lá para a discussão, volta para o assessment. Coleta mais informações, discute de novo. Toma outra decisão. Diferente. É exatamente o que eu falei para vocês ainda há pouco. Tá? Você está no shopping, vê uma pessoa por quem você se sente irremediavelmente atraído. Aí você você toma uma decisão, né? Aí você vai lá e diz assim, olha, quer jantar comigo? Ou sei lá, faz alguma coisa. Chega lá junto, chega na pessoa, como a gente diz hoje, né? Aí a pessoa vai dizer para você assim, ei, meu irmão, qual é a tua? Sai fora. Mas você não quer sair fora. Então você vai cercar aquela pessoa, você vai correr atrás dela. Mas você tomou uma decisão que não funcionou. Então aí você tem que tomar outro rumo. Mais informações, vai atrás de mais informações. Aí toma uma outra decisão, usa uma outra alternativa. E é exatamente a mesma coisa. Tá? Infelizmente, gente, nós professores somos egoístas. Nós somos individualistas. Tá? Então é aquela história assim, a coordenação, graças a Deus ele não nos cortou, a coordenação pede para você fazer um plano de aula. Aí o cara já está lá naquela escola há 50 anos. É aquele professor que já está quase para se aposentar compulsoriamente. Aí ele diz para o pedagogo assim, não, pô, fazer plano de aula, aquele plano escrito, não sei nem fazer isso. O meu plano sou eu mesmo. E aí o pedagogo se vê em altas, né? Porque nós sabemos que cada ano é um ano, né? Cada série ou cada grupo é um grupo. E não interessa os 100 anos de Matusalém experimental que você tenha. Eu, por exemplo, já estou ensinando, como eu disse a vocês, há muitos anos. Mas cada vez que eu entro em uma turma nova, eu tenho que dar a minha primeira aula sentado. Quem adivinha por quê? Eu estou todo preparado para dar a minha aula, antes que vocês digam isso, tá? Mas a minha primeira aula na turma é 90% do tempo sentado. Eu não tenho problema de coluna, nem de rim, nem de nada. Mas eu fico sentado 90% da aula. Por quê?
Para observação?
Não. Eu posso observar andando ou de pé. Sabe por quê? Porque eu não quero que nenhum aluno veja que as minhas pernas estão shaking. Então, a cada nova turma com quem eu me deparo, né? E vocês não foram diferentes, né? Só que vocês não podem ver nada, só a minha cabeça, graças a Deus. Mas a cada nova turma que eu me deparo, eu tenho as mesmas dúvidas, os mesmos questionamentos. E apesar dos 100 anos de experiência, eu tremo. Porque eu não sei o que me espera. Então, eu tenho que ter um plano de aula. Se eu tenho esse plano só na minha cabeça, é problema meu. Agora, se a escola pede para eu escrever esse plano, eu tenho que saber escrever. Eu tenho que saber dizer o que eu vou fazer. Então, esse negócio de dizer assim, eu não preciso de plano escrito. É muito provavelmente porque eu faço a mesma coisa há 100 anos e nunca mudo. Então, infelizmente, a grande maioria dos professores é individualista e egoísta. E isso tem que acabar. E vocês, que são mais jovens, né, que estão começando agora, ou que têm pouco tempo ainda vão ter muito tempo na estrada, vocês precisam mudar essa visão. Não vai ser fácil, eu tenho certeza disso. Eu me lembro perfeitamente de uma situação, vou contar rapidamente para vocês, porque eu quero que a gente passe para esse outro item aí que eu falei há pouco. Eu passei algum tempo nos Estados Unidos e eu trabalhava numa escola que recebeu uma família de espanhóis, de mexicanos, espanhóis, não me lembro bem. Era o pai, a mãe, uma filha de 9 anos e uma filha de 2 anos ou 3 anos. Muito bem. Aí, aqueles programas de apoio, né, do governo para a escola, o cidadão tinha ido para lá para trabalhar, enfim, entraram na escola. Muito bem. Nenhum deles falava inglês. Tá? Aí a menina de 9 anos começou a assistir aula, começou a fazer curso de inglês paralelo, né, na escola, para fazer aquele placement, aquele nivelamento. Passado alguns meses, a mãe teve câncer. E aí, o comportamento da menina de 9 anos na escola mudou completamente. Ela era muito alegre, vocês sabem como é o mexicano, né, o espanhol, né, o italiano, ela era muito alegre, muito sociável, enfim, de repente ela ficou muda, ficou fechada nela mesma. E aí os professores começaram, então, a se movimentar. Aí a coordenação reuniu os professores daquela turma, né, e eles, então, disseram, olha, fulana de tal, assim, 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 ela estuda bem, ela tira notas boas, ela não tem problema de aprendizagem, ela, inclusive, já estava falando inglês, estava se socializando, isso foi abrupto. Aí a escola começou a fazer o seu assessment, até chegar aos pais. Sabe qual era o problema? O problema era que, como ela, aluna, menina de 9 anos, era a única da família que falava inglês, ela tinha que ouvir o que o médico dizia e traduzir tudo para o pai e para a mãe. Quer dizer, ela ouvia em inglês o que o médico dizia, né? Ela conversando com uma menina de 9 anos, ele deveria ter aquele filtro, né, para poder fazer ela entender, e aí ela tinha que dizer tudo o que estava acontecendo em espanhol para o pai e para a mãe. Aí vocês imaginem, né? A mãe com câncer terminal, certo? E uma filha de 9 anos tendo que fazer essa ponte entre o médico e a família. Aí, a avaliação do problema mudou completamente. As decisões que foram tomadas foram completamente diferentes. Então, eles fizeram assessment todinho, né? Então, foi aquele approach todo, né? Aquela coleção de informações, até chegar na informação final que deu condições para que a decisão fosse tomada. Quer dizer, ela teve que ir para o psicólogo, aquela coisa toda do acompanhamento, né? Mas, se não fosse assim, o que era que ia acontecer com essa menina? Ela ia reprovar de ano, tá? Ela ia perder todos os amiguinhos da escola, porque vocês sabem que, né, quando a pessoa não socializa, os amigos chutam mesmo, não querem nem saber. E por aí ia, né? Então isso ia se tornar uma bomba ambulante. Essa é a diferença básica entre o assessment e o evaluation. Is that clear for you? Olha, eu normalmente eu posso passar do inglês para o português e do português para o inglês, assim, como se fosse com a maior naturalidade. Então, se isso incomodar vocês, vocês me avisem, por favor. So, is that clear for you? Yes, okay. So,
Yes, it is.
no questions about this. Okay, so I'll try to show you another screen. Okay, now with this story, I want you to discuss with me. Here. Just a second, okay? Right. Okay. Can you see? Can you see the screen? Yes? Okay, so I'll have to make it a little smaller. Now, I know that this is a little difficult to read, but if I don't do this, you cannot show all, you cannot see all the text, okay? So you have this in your material, right? So you don't need to worry about that. You have this in your material. And it says a little story for you. There was this poor farmer who decided to go to the city market one day and sell a goose, a large basket of grain, and his ferocious watchdog. To get to the market, he had to cross a river in a very small rowboat. Unfortunately, the rowboat was only big enough to hold the farmer and one item of cargo. So, in any one trip, he could take either the basket of grain, the dog, or the goose with him. But he would have to make several trips across the river before he could get everything to the market. This tedious procedure also presented the farmer with an additional problem. If he took the grain on his first trip in the boat and left the dog and the goose behind, the dog would eat the goose. Same thing if he took the dog and left the goose behind with the basket of grain, it would eat the grain. The poor farmer was very perplexed. He sat down beside the river and tried to decide what to do, while the goose eyed the grain hungrily, and the dog watched the goose with greed. Nós já temos aí, we already have some assessment in the story. What is the assessment? The boat is very small. The capacity of cargo is only the farmer and one item of cargo. All this is information that he already have. So, this is assessment, okay? He knows this information. He's conscious of that information. So this is assessment. But he needs the money. He needs to sell those items. So based on this information that he already has, what is the decision he will make? In your opinion? I'll give you 1 minute to think. What can be done? Então, o que é que a gente tem aqui? Um fazendeiro, né? Com 3 coisas: cachorro, feroz, ganso e cesto de grãos. Ele precisa levar isso para o outro lado do rio para vender, no mercado. O barco é pequenino. Só dá para ele e mais um desses elementos de carga. Ou seja, ele não pode botar os 3 juntos, até porque vai ser um desastre completo. Graças a Deus, então, que o barco só dá para levar um. Aí, diante disso, né, ele ficou doido. Porque ele já fez o assessment dele. Mas ele não sabe qual é a decisão que ele tem que tomar. Aí é a avaliação que ele tem que fazer. Ele tem que tomar uma decisão, porque ele tem que pegar o dinheiro, ele precisa do dinheiro. E enquanto isso acontece, o ganso está morto de fome e o cachorro mais ainda. So, they are almost in the edge of doing what the farmer doesn't want them to do. So the goose is about to eat the grain, and while he's eating the grain and get a little fatter, the dog will eat the goose. And then no more money, no more city market, no more nothing. So assessment is complete. What's your opinion of a decision? What would you do if you were in the farmer's shoes?
My decision is a little strange, but I'll try. So I would put the grains and the dog in the rowboat,
No,
and
it's not possible.
not possible. It
Not
has to
possible.
be the farmer.
One, the farmer,
It
because
has
he
to
has
be
to
the
row
farmer.
the because he has to row the boat. It's a row boat.
So I would put the grain inside the boat. I would row the boat and let the goose swim
And the
after
dog.
the grain,
Oh.
and the dog swim after the goose.
Swim?
Yep.
But how do they know that they have to follow the boat?
The goose is hungry.
And the dog can drown.
No, the dog can swim.
Oh, you don't know how deep is the river. You don't know how much the dog can swim. You don't know the distance between the two rivers.
It's a try.
The two margins.
It's a try.
Yeah, but
It's
that's
a try.
yeah, as you said, that's a strange decision.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
it's something.
Right. Any other opinion? Yes, how?
I think I would. This is a kind of a port area.
What do you mean?
Like, okay, there are other boats in there, so there are other people that he can talk to.
No, the farmer is very isolated. It's the
Oh.
only farmer, the only boat, the only dog, the only goose, the only grain. He's alone.
I would go back home, and I would leave. I would leave two of them in there. Yeah, if there is no other person that I can count on to take care, to watch those pets, those animals, I would go back home and leave one of them there, while I would go to the city to try to sell it.
It's a possibility.
Yeah, that's what I would do. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a possibility. No more ideas? There is one piece of information in the story, okay, which gives you the key for the solution he took, for the decision he took. So you need to assess the story, right? So you already know that the boat is small, you can take only the farmer in one item of cargo, that he's alone, he's isolated, the house of the farm is very distant, okay, probably, because it's a river in the city market, next to the city market. So it might be difficult to go back, right, to the house. And so you need to assess, because there is one little piece of information that gives you the answer for the decision he took. Okay. Let me help you. It says here, okay, to get to the market, he had to cross a river in a very small rowboat. And somewhere, later it says he needs to go this, see here, but he would have to make several trips across the river before he could get everything to the market. This tedious procedure. this is the answer. The only alternative, the only possibility for him is to take this tedious procedure. No other possibility. So he would take the goose in the boat to the other side of the river. He would leave the goose there, come back, okay, because the dog wouldn't eat the grain. So he would come back, get the grain, take the grain to the other side of the river, and bring the goose back. Then he would get the dog, take the dog to the other side of the river, leave the dog there because the dog wouldn't eat the grain, come back and bring the goose back. And then he would have all the three items of cargo on the other side of the river. So this example is in your material because here you have assessment and evaluation in the same situation, in the same story. And the decision, the evaluation is exactly in the story. This is an example of assessment and evaluation. Is that okay? Raíssa, Hall, Alana?
Yes.
Good. Any questions? Why are you smiling, Hall? Because you're putting yourself in the farmer's shoes?
Yes, too much.
You know what?
Yeah, but that's part of the process. Yeah.
You know what? One student of mine once reading this, what he told me. He told me, teacher, I would kill the goose, grill the goose, right? Eat the goose together with the dog, right? I would have my lunch, and then I would have only the dog and the grains, and then no problem, I could go to the other side easily. But of course, the story says he needs to sell all the three items. Okay? So, this is assessment and evaluation, and this is what the teacher can do. In the materials you have in this week, you have a list of alternatives for assessment. There is no list of decisions because the decision depends on the individual situation involving you, the school, and any other element you can get hold of. And our exercise this week, our assignment this week, is more or less like this. I gave you a story, and that is the story of the Snow White, a little bit adapted, a little bit different, right? And I'm asking you to read the story and write about your opinion considering assessment and evaluation. And I'm asking you to try to give me an example of your own actions, right? So you're going to read the story, tell me what is missing or what is not missing, what you can see as assessment and what you can see as evaluation in the story, okay? Then you're going to relate that to one example of your own situation. That assignment is worth 3 points, okay? We are going to have a second one on the 21st, on the week of the 21st. for another 3 points. And then a final exercise for 4 points. And that will come to a total of 10 points. You have a deadline for the exercise, for the assignment, okay? Since we are not going to have a class next Saturday, and some of you are not here now, I will expand the time limit for the assignment until Wednesday, okay? So I'm going to change the deadline there in the platform. So instead of posting until tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken, I will expand it until Wednesday, okay? But make sure you don't lose track of this deadline, okay? Otherwise, it may give you problems with the final grade. You know that this is a process, okay?
Teacher, just a question. So this activity we will have until November 11th. Is that right or no?
Yeah, 11th, Wednesday.
Okay,
Midnight.
okay, thank you. All right.
But I'm going to change in the platform. It's not there yet, okay? Let me write something to Alana here. Wait. Sorry for the mistakes, it's typing.
Professor?
Yes.
You said three evaluations, right?
Right, 3 assignments.
3 assignments. So we have one for Wednesday, another one for November 21st.
Right.
Yeah,
But
November
it's not in
21st.
But it's not in the platform yet.
Okay.
Okay.
November 21st, and the last
The
one is
final
for
one,
November
November 28th.
28th.
See, it's
November 28th.
usually in the beginning of the week. Okay. So our next class will be on the 21st. But
Yeah.
I will post the material and the assignment for that day on Sunday or Monday this week already. So you can advance your reading and your actions on that. So that will happen always, okay? So
okay.
On the 21st, when we talk about the second assignment and the second topic, I will be posting the material for the next week. So it's always 1 week ahead, in other words. Okay? So that will give you time to read.
The final assignment is the one that we have to form groups?
Well, you can do the assignment in groups since now. What's the problem? Each one of you... No, that's fine, no problem. You can do this. It's okay, it's permitted. You can make your groups and do the assignments, all the 3 assignments in group. No problem with that. The only thing you need to pay attention to is that each one of you individually will have to post the answer because of the grade and the feedback, okay? So let's say you, Hall, and Alana, you are a group. You do the exercise together. Then you post your answer. Hall posts his and Alana posts hers individually in the platform. It's no problem if it's the same text, if it's the same answer, right? It's no problem there. But the posting needs to be individual, okay? Is that okay?
I was just asking because I remember that you